All right, we are reading chapter 5 today in the Ghost Grave. Last chapter we ended with Josh, first of all, meeting a stray cat. And we found out that Aunt Ethel does not like cats and does not want Josh to feed it. We also learned about Cash for Critters, the animal shelter that the town was earning money for, but then it was stolen. And we ended with Josh finding a bike in the barn, and he's going to ride to Carbon City and get some cat food, even though Aunt Ethel does not want him to feed it. So here we go. Clutching the handlebars, I flew down the hill. The road had no bike lane, but it didn't matter because there weren't any cars either. I stayed on the edge of the road, listening for approaching vehicles. I coasted most of the time, braking when the bike started going too fast. I rolled into Carbon City and stopped where the bus had dropped me off. At home, I always put a chain and padlock on my bike when I left it. Here, I put the kickstand down and walked into the Carbon City market. An elderly man sat behind the small counter, reading a magazine. He looked up when I entered, nodded, and returned to his reading. Shelves lined both sides of the market, with 2 rows of merchandise in the middle. A cooler for milk and soft drinks, and a small freezer faced forward from the back wall. With no produce or meat, people wouldn't do a weekly grocery shopping here, but the locals could stop by to pick up what they forgot in town, or to buy snack items such as candy and popcorn. One area in the front looked like a mini hardware store with tools, electrical cords, and a bin of nails. Mostly the store sold the kinds of items people run out of: bathroom tissue, orange juice, canned fruits and vegetables, flour, and sugar. I found cat food along the right-hand wall. I almost missed it because I was looking for a big bag. The store had only 1-pound boxes. I knew it probably cost more this way, but I carried a box to the counter. "Haven't seen you before," the man said as he gave me the change. "I'm visiting for the summer." I could tell he wanted to ask who I was visiting, but I didn't give him a chance. I figured in a town like this, everyone knew everyone else, and I didn't want word to get back to Aunt Ethel that I had been in Carbon City buying cat food. "Could I have a bag, please?" I said. He put the box of cat food in a blue plastic bag that said Walmart. He must save bags from his own shopping to reuse in the store. "Thanks," I said, and hurried out. I hung the bag on the handlebars and headed back to Aunt Ethel's house. I had sailed down the hill, but I crawled back up. I kept wanting to shift the bike to a lower gear, the way I would at home. Instead, I stood up and pumped until my legs ached. My damp t-shirt clung to my back, and my breath came in short gasps. If I did this a couple times a week, I'd be in great shape by the end of summer. Part of the time, I had to dismount and walk the bike up the steep hill. Finally, I turned down Aunt Ethel's gravel driveway. As I returned the bike to the barn, I planned my next move. I decided to keep the cat food in the treehouse. It would be where I needed it, and Aunt Ethel would not discover it. Ordinarily, I would have felt guilty about doing something I had been told not to do, but I felt too sorry for the cat to be remorseful. Remorseful means feeling sorry. If I didn't help the cat, who would? The cat's hunger seemed more important than following Aunt Ethel's rules. If I only fed it out by the treehouse, it wouldn't bother Florence. Leaving the cat food in the barn, I went inside. The house was quiet. Aunt Ethel lay tilted back in her recliner, snoring softly. I splashed some cold water on my face and filled a glass. As I drank, I realized the cat would need water as well as food. Earlier, when I put away the breakfast dishes, I had seen some small plastic bowls with snap-on lids. Now I helped myself to 2 of the bowls. I filled one with water and snapped a lid on it, then went back to the barn to retrieve the box of cat food. When I reached the treehouse, I opened the bowl of water and shook the cat food into the other bowl. I left both bowls on the ground where the cheese had landed. Then I climbed up the ladder to wait for Mr. Stray. Of course, I didn't know for sure if the cat was male or female, but I wanted to name him something. Mr. Stray seemed appropriate. I wondered where he slept. I hoped no coyotes or cougars prowled the woods at night. I stayed at the window for 10 minutes or so. Twice I called, "Here, kitty, kitty, kitty," in case Mr. Stray had once been a pet. I would know to come when called. There was no sign of the cat. As I watched, I felt myself relax. It seemed peaceful in the woods. No traffic noise, no boom boxes blaring, no kids at play or parents calling the kids to come home. Nothing here but Mother Nature at her best. I decided to read while I waited. If I looked outside before I turned the page each time, I wouldn't miss Miss Stray. I settled onto the pillow and reached for my book. It was not where I had left it. I'd placed it on the floor beside my pillow. Now it lay under the table. Someone's been here, I thought. Someone came in the treehouse while I was away. Who? No neighbors lived nearby. A transient? A transient is someone who goes from place to place who doesn't have a permanent home. So he was thinking maybe somebody was walking through the woods and decided, oh, there's a treehouse, I'll take a rest. I checked the box of crackers I had left on the table. I'd rolled the inner wrapper tightly so I wouldn't attract mice or ants. The crackers were exactly as I'd left them. The box was still half full. Surely a transient would have eaten them. Someone bent on mischief would have vandalized the treehouse. But everything was tidy. If the book had not been moved, I would never have guessed anyone had been there. The thought of an intruder made me uneasy. If someone came in here once, they might come again. The feeling of peace and solitude vanished. I felt edgy and kept listening for approaching footsteps. Why would someone move my book? To let me know he'd been there? Maybe I hadn't put the book on the floor. Maybe I remembered it wrong. This must be it, I decided. I forgot where I'd left the book earlier. I opened the book, but I couldn't concentrate on the story. After a few minutes, I replaced my bookmark and set the book down, paying attention to exactly where I placed it, on the floor, beside the pillow. When I looked out a window, I saw Mr. Stray hunched over the water bowl, lapping up the water. I felt glad that I had brought it for him. After he finished drinking, he ate some cat food. As I watched, I thought, I'm going to try to tame him. If I can get him used to me, maybe Mom will let me keep him. I could get a cat carrier and take him home on the plane. Hello, Mr. Stray, I whispered. Instantly, he fled into the bushes. I waited, not moving. After a few minutes, I crept back to the food. After a few minutes, he crept back to the food. I let him eat a while before I said, Hello, Mr. Stray, again. He looked up, froze, and then, after staring at me for a few seconds, he cautiously began eating again. Good kitty, I whispered. Good Mr. Stray. That time, he didn't bother to look. I'll get him used to my voice, I thought. He'll start to associate my voice with food, and he won't be afraid of me. When he finished, he washed his whiskers again, then stood and stretched before he went back into the woods. I climbed down the ladder, refilled the cat food bowl, and turned to leave. Mr. Stray stood on a big rock watching me. I sat cross-legged on the ground next to the food and water. I watched him, but I didn't say anything. After a few minutes, he stepped off the rock and walked away into the woods. Encouraged that he let me be so close, I began planning how I could keep him. If he was tame, I thought Mom would let me take him home, even if it cost extra on the plane. By now, she and Stephen were probably feeling so guilty about ruining my summer, they would agree to letting me have a cat. Meanwhile, I should take Mr. Stray to a veterinarian as soon as I could. I knew from taking care of Charlie that animals must be wormed and neutered. Mr. Stray also had to be vaccinated for rabies and whatever else cats get. I had no idea how I would manage to transport him to a vet. I couldn't carry him on a bicycle, that's for sure. I would have to try to change Aunt Ethel's mind about helping him. Of course, I had to catch him first. Pleased by my success in getting close to Mr. Stray, I decided to stay at the treehouse a while. I felt like reading now. I climbed the ladder, savoring the silence again. I knew my afternoons in the treehouse, alone with my books, would be the best part of the summer, except for helping Mr. Stray, of course. I entered the treehouse, opened the windows, flopped onto my pillow, and reached for the book. It wasn't where I'd left it. I looked around, all my senses alert now. What was going on here? This time I was positive where I'd put the book. No one could possibly have come in the treehouse while I sat with Mr. Stray. The ladder had been in plain sight, yet the book lay on the table, along with two others from the box. A feeling of foreboding prickled the hairs on the back of my neck. I stuck my head out each of the windows, searching the woods for any sign of another person. I saw only the woods, heard only the chirping of the birds, and the low hum of a small airplane engine in the distance. Shaken, I decided to take my book back to the house and read it there. I hurried home, glancing over my shoulder. I wondered what had made Aunt Florence think the treehouse was haunted. I could ask Aunt Ethel, but I didn't want to tell her about the book. She might refuse to let me go back to the treehouse, and I wanted to keep feeding Mr. Stray. I tried to act nonchalant when I went inside. Nonchalant means that, oh, no big deal. I'm calm. I'm cool. Okay. Nothing's bothering me. Aunt Ethel was still in her recliner, but she was awake and reading a cookbook. I got a drink of water, then went up to my room, lay on the bed, and tried to read. I couldn't concentrate, though. For the first time ever, my own life was more mysterious and interesting than the book I was partway through. I put it down and thought about everything that had happened since I got to Carbon City. Was it wrong to feed the cat when Aunt Ethel had said not to? Or was it worse to ignore an animal's hunger when I could help it? Should I tell Aunt Ethel about the book being moved? I knew I wasn't mistaken about that. It had really been moved. But by whom? Should I mail the letters I'd written, knowing they would make Mom and Stephen worry? I had plenty of questions, but no answers. After a while, I went downstairs. "Where did you go on your bike ride?" Aunt Ethel asked. "Down the hill toward Carbon City. It was easier going down than coming back up." That wasn't the whole truth, but it wasn't a lie either. She laughed. "I could have told you that." She passed me a bowl of raw baby carrots. "Snack time." I took a few carrots to munch on. "Is there anything you want me to do to help?" I asked. I expected her to hand me a dust cloth or a broom, or maybe suggest I pull some weeds. "Do you know how to knit?" she asked. "Knit? No, I don't." "I'll teach you. I'm knitting a scarf as a gift for Muriel, but I have arthritis in my hands, and it's getting too hard to work the knitting needles. I only have a few inches left to do." Arthritis is a disease where your muscles and the bones ache and stuff, so it's really hard for someone to knit if they have arthritis. She opened a large shopping bag and withdrew a scarf about 2 feet long in shades of purple, lavender, and red. One end of the scarf hung on a wooden knitting needle whose pointed end was stuck through a big ball of yarn. A second needle was also stuck in the yarn. Aunt Ethel sat on the couch, patting the cushion beside her to indicate where I should sit. I sat. She showed me how to hold the knitting needles, how to stick the point of the empty needle into the end stitch on the other needle, then loop the yarn over and slide the stitch off the first needle, where the scarf was, and onto the other needle. It didn't look hard, but when I tried, I felt as if I had 10 thumbs. Gradually, I got the hang of it, with Aunt Ethel giving me directions every step of the way. "While you do that," she said, "I'll start our dinner. We're having oatmeal pancakes with applesauce. Spaghetti for breakfast and pancakes for dinner. Knit one, knit two." If the guys on the summer baseball team could see me now, I thought, they'd fall over laughing. When I write the paper on my summer vacation, I think I'll leave out the part about learning to knit. After a while, though, I began to enjoy the repetitive motion and the clicking of the knitting needles. Once I didn't have to concentrate so hard on how to do it, I found the process relaxing, and I let my mind drift to the treehouse and the question of who or what had been there with me. Although I had been frightened when I left, I decided to return first thing the next morning. I had to go back to feed Mr. Stray, but now I also wanted to see if any of the books got moved overnight. Maybe the treehouse was still haunted, as Aunt Florence had believed it was 70 years ago. Okay, that's the end of chapter 5. All right, so now we're getting into the friend in the treehouse. So, how would you feel if you went to a treehouse and you knew that no one could have been there, but yet something moved? Would you want to do what Josh is doing and go back? I don't know if I'd be brave enough to go back, especially by myself. Well, we'll find out tomorrow when I read the next chapter. Well, actually, Monday when I read the next chapter. All right. See ya.